Welcome to the fairest show on television. First tonight, rarely does it not matter what a president says. And sadly enough, in one sense, after what we just saw, we might be at that point in Hawaii. In a way, what the president said or what he didn't say, how he acted, that will be dissected. But in a larger sense, there's never a second chance to make a first impression. There's never a second chance to show your instincts as commander-in-chief, to run to the danger or to run to help Americans who are in trouble, as those in Maui were almost 2 weeks ago. You don't get a second chance at that. And now it appears it was a little too late. And this isn't partisan between President Biden and President Bush or President Bush and President Obama. It was, of course, too late for President Bush when he gave a similar speech as we just saw from President Biden about Hurricane Katrina. For the rest of his presidency, Katrina defined President Bush. It, of course, was too late for Ted Cruz, who came home from Mexico during the Houston ice storm. It was too late. Showing up after mass media shaming, even by usually friendly media, doesn't count. Of course, Hawaii's governor didn't tell the president that during their visit, and as you could see, their walk through parts of the hardest hit areas in Maui. Coming to a disaster, of course, is important. But we are almost 2 weeks now into the Maui fires. We know that at least 114 people are dead. Only 27 have been identified. We can understand why, considering how hot that fire burned. Another 850 people are still missing. Rescue teams have searched 85% of the disaster site, for 15% is still left to find more bodies. Again, there are still close to 1,000 people missing. Not only does Hawaii know that and remember the past 2 weeks, but the rest of the country does as well. It's very hard to forget a president who couldn't be bothered during his beach vacation.
Can you tell us about your Hawaii trip, sir?
No, not now.
Mr. President, are you going to take questions on Maui?
Can you come talk about Maui? Can you come talk about Maui, Mr. President?
Today we heard the same story we've been hearing from the president during past natural disasters. And now he's directed someone to look into the massive missteps leading up to and during the immediate response to the fires. The fact that the sirens didn't go off, the inaction from officials at the local level when Hawaii Electric first warned of issues with the power lines, or the initial declaration that the fire was contained when it really wasn't. That's before the fire. Now you think about what's happened in the 2 weeks since the fire, and certainly in the immediate 24 or 48 hours, there were massive screw-ups. Kanani Souza is a Hawaii state representative and joins us. All right, let's put partisanship aside. There'll be time to get to the aftermath in a minute. We covered that. Does Hawaii right now, in a larger sense, Maui in particular, have what it needs in order to begin the rebuilding process and take care of the people who survived this?
Absolutely not. You know, the residents of Maui, the residents of Lahaina who have been displaced, they need more than a $700 check, and wondering when the government is actually going to step in and do the hard lift, the heavy lifting and the hard work for them. The people on the ground have been handling this effort all on their own, you know, whether it's the water, bringing water supply to the people who don't have it, and food, etc. The people on the ground, the Native Hawaiians, the residents of Lahaina have been all coming together to do it themselves.
All right. President listed off a number of things that FEMA and other rescuers have done: 75,000 liters of water, 10,000 blankets, 5,000 meals, on and on and on. I'm wondering how much of this is fair to blame the president for the response. And he is the commander-in-chief, and when he pushes the panic button, C-17s from Dover and from Fort Bragg and from the West Coast take off with command centers and rescue teams. That didn't happen. Certainly didn't happen in the first 24 to 48 hours. But how much of this was a state problem? And how much is it really fair to blame President Biden for what happened?
I think that there has been incompetence at every level. It's the county level, it's the state level, and it's the federal level. And a lot of the initial response had to do with the county, the mayor, and at the state level with the governor. And so, I think that the president, has to take responsibility and accountability for the role that, FEMA is playing and just the lack of resources at this point in time. But it really stemmed from a county and state issue.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.